Our first game on the slate is the New York Giants and the Green Bay Packers. You have Saquon Barkley, you have Aaron Jones, and A.J. Dillon. You know, the Packers defense against the run is kind of middle of the road. It's not bad. So Saquon gets only 3 there. But if you look at how they're going to use Saquon, the Giants use him, their whole game plan is built around him. So his volume's a 5, his scheme's a 5, his boom ability. We all know that Saquon is capable of just blowing it out of the water at any given moment. That's a 5. He gets 18 points and he's an RB1. He's a must start this weekend against the Packers. Now, on the flip side, the Packers, they have Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon. Now, these two guys kind of split touches. So they each get, for their volume, they're about the same volume. They get a 3 there for the volume. The scheme kind of leans a little bit more towards Aaron Jones. I think he gets a little more love in the passing game and he gets more touches all around. The boom ability, Aaron Jones, we've seen him have huge monster games. We've seen a couple of those from Dillon too, but you got to give the nod to Jones there. And then they're both playing against a real bad defense, run defense. The Giants are horrible. So Aaron Jones gets 18 points. He's a must start this weekend. And you can start AJ Dillon as a RB2. He gets 14 points. So go ahead and start all of them. The running backs in this game, just start them and you should be all right. Steelers and Bills. Now the Bills defense, they're pretty dominant. They've given up 4 rushing touchdowns this year, which is averaging 1 touchdown a game, but they've only given up 335 rushing yards all season. So that's under 100 yards a game. They're really stout against the run. So with that being said, Najee Harris on the Pittsburgh Steelers side, you know, he's going against a stout defense. He only gets a 2 there. The volume that he's going to get, he gets pretty good volume. So he gets 4 there. The scheme, you know, I think that this offense is built around Najee to a certain extent. They're going to have a rookie quarterback in there with Kenny Pickett this week. So they're going to have to rely on Najee a lot and on that running game. It's just a tough game to do that when you're playing against one of the best rush defenses in the league. So, and Najee's capable of having big games. He's going to get only 13, though, a total score of 13 to start here. That's just a RB2. Now, he's Najee, so you have to start him because you probably bought him in the first round. You probably drafted him in the first round. So you're going to have to start Najee, but he's kind of like a low-end RB2 this week against Buffalo Bills defense. Devin Singletary against the Steeler defense. The Steelers, they're kind of middle of the road against the rush. They're not that great. They're not horrible. So he's not going to have too big of a problem there. But the problem with the Bills running backs are their volume and how they use them. So Singletary, he's a low end RB2 start too. He gets 3s across the board for versus defense versus the run, the volume he's going to get, the scheme, and the boom ability. Let's get into our third game. Our third game is the Chargers and the Browns, and it's Austin Eckler. Now, the Browns' rush defense isn't great, so Eckler gets a 4 there. The volume he's going to get lately, he's been getting a lot of targets out of the backfield. I mean, he's on a record-setting pace for the season. They don't rush him a lot, but the volume that he gets out of the backfield makes up for it. So he gets a lot of volume. The scheme lately has been more around him with some of the injuries they have at wide receiver. So he gets 4th there. And we all know that he's capable of just blowing a game up. His boom ability is a 5. He's got 17 total points. He's a must start this week against the Browns. On the other hand, you have Nick Chubb and you have Kareem Hunt. Now, Nick Chubb, the defense he's going up against is about middle of the road, so he gets a 3 there. His volume, always volume heavy. He gets a ton of touches. That's a 5. The scheme is built around Chubb. That's a 5. His boom ability, that's a 5. He's got 18 in this. He's a must start this week against these Chargers. You got to get him out there and start him. Kareem Hunt, on the other hand, is a low end RB2. He's going to get some volume. He's going to get the scheme a little bit around him, and his boom ability is like a 3. So he gets 12 points. He is a low end RB2. You could start either one of these guys if you have to. In a pinch, you can start Kareem Hunt. Our fourth game is going to be the Vikings against the Chicago Bears. Now, the Vikings and Bears, it's an interdivision rivalry. It's going to be a tough game for both teams. And you just got to look at it and say, which one of these teams are going to show up, because the Vikings, sometimes they're 3-1. So you would think that they'd, be a real good team, but you never know what you're going to get. On the defensive side for Minnesota, they're going against Khalil Herbert or David Montgomery. Now, if David Montgomery plays, that's going to hurt Herbert. But if he doesn't play, Herbert's a surefire start. The Vikings are horrible against the run. So Herbert gets a 5 there. He's going to get the volume. That's 4. The scheme will be around him. I'm just going to run the ball down their throat. That old saying. So they want to run the ball. They can't pass with Justin Fields. The Bears just cannot pass with Justin Fields. And Herbert's capable of having a big, big game. So he's a really good RB1 this week, 18 points. David Montgomery, if David Montgomery should start, I would still be concerned with his volume. If they're going to ease him back into it, how much Herbert would eat into that. So he would be a low-end RB2. And if Montgomery started, Khalil Herbert would even be an RB2. But they both would be worth a start against this defense. Now, on the other side of the ball, with Dalvin Cook and the Minnesota Vikings, the Bears defense against the run isn't much better. They have a bad running defense. The volume, Dalvin Cook's been getting the volume. He's been getting the ball. It's just the scheme, for some reason, it hasn't just meshed well with him with this new Kevin O'Connell offense, but he's due for a big game. I say he's a must start too. He's an RB1. Any running back in this game, go ahead, run them out there. You're going to be okay. I would just be a little concerned, though, with David Montgomery because of the injury and how he's going to be worked back into it. On to the next game, we have the Detroit Lions and the New England Patriots. You got Jamal Williams, you got Damian Harris, and Ramondre Stevenson. In this particular game, you have to look at the defense. So the New England Patriots defense is pretty stout against the run. Now, they give up some rushing yards, but they don't give up a whole lot of rushing touchdowns. And they've only given up 2 rushing touchdowns this year. So they're really tough against giving up touchdowns. They've given up some yards. They bend, but they don't break. Jamal Williams, his volume is going to be off the chain in this one, especially with Amon-Ra St. Brown hurt. So look for Hawkinson, look for Jamal Williams. If Reynolds is healthy, he'll be out there. Look for him to get a lot of volume. So Williams' volume is going to be great. The scheme, they'll probably want to, get him the ball as much as they can. He's been getting a lot of volume in the past couple of games. And then he's capable of having a big game. He's a start. He's a high-end RB1, low-end high-end RB2, low-end RB1 start here. Jamal Williams, you can run him out there against this New England defense, even though they don't give up touchdowns, but they give up yards. So something's gonna have to give here sooner or later. Now, on the other side, I would just rather avoid the Patriots backfield altogether, but they're playing against a real bad run defense. This run defense is horrible. So the only problem is Ramondre Stevenson and Damian Harris, they're going to split each other. They're going to split the touches. The scheme is built a little bit more towards Harris, you would think, but if you look at the pass attempts and targets, they're about the same there. Boom ability is about the same. I score them at a 13 each, so that's a RB2 play. The only thing that's really making me say, yeah, you could play one of these guys this week is that they're playing against such a horrible defense, but it's just, you don't know which one to play. That's the problem with the Patriots defense. You never offense and their running backs. You never know which one to play. So You can run them out there. These are all RB2s in this game. Now, coming into our next game, we have the Seattle Seahawks and the Saints, the New Orleans Saints. Now, the New Orleans Saints defense is pretty stout against the run. So that makes it a kind of a tough matchup for the Seahawks and Rashad Penny. Now, his volume will be about a 3. He only started getting a lot of carries last week against the Detroit Lions, and maybe they'll see that they need to get him the ball more. So hopefully the volume will increase for him. And the scheme, they don't really plan their game around the running backs. But last week, like I said, there's a lot more scheme for Penny. Let's see if that continues. Now we know that he's capable of having big games. Last year, the way he ended the season, and last week he had a big game. So he gets a total score of 13 going up against this Saints defense. He's a RB2 start, a low end, mid to low end RB2 start. And then Alvin Kamara, he's been dealing with the rib injury. He didn't play last week in London against the Vikings. And now they're saying he's questionable still for this week, but he may play. So let's see what Alvin Kamara can do. That's not going to be, that's a real, he's going up against a real easy defense to run against. The Seahawks have horrible rushing defense. They're horrible in rushing defense. They're the bottom 5 against the run. Kamara, we'll see how his volume is. If he's healthy, I would say he gets a good amount of volume. The scheme should be kind of built around him a little bit, and his boom ability. We all know in seasons past, he's been able to blow it up, but he hasn't done that recently. So he gets 14. He's an RB2 start. The Dolphins and the Jets. This is just the messed up backfields. We don't even really need to get into this game a whole lot. Mozart and Edmonds are just cutting into each other. That backfield's kind of a mess. I have them both as a sit in this one. And then with the Jets, it's just Breece Hall. You start Breece Hall. He's a RB2 start this week. Even though the Dolphins defense is pretty good, the volume Hall has been getting is increasing each week. They're starting to use him in the pass game more. They're starting to scheme around him more, and his ability to have a big game, we haven't seen that yet. So we'll see how that goes. Michael Carter right now, you can't really consider starting him. Maybe a low end flex because of his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. But this Jets offense has really targeted themselves around Breece Hall, and they're really doing everything to get Hall the ball. He's the guy. He's taken over as RB1 in that backfield. Atlanta Falcons and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Atlanta's just put Cordero Patterson on the IR. They have Tyler Algier. Algier's getting a lot of volume. The Buccaneers, though, have one of the best run defenses in the league. This is going to be a tough test for the Falcons. Now, we all know that Mariota can't really pass the ball, so they're going to have to run. They're going to have to figure out how to pass it. Kyle Pitts, he's out this week, so it's just Drake London. They have to shut London down. You double the rookie, and then you're going to run rookies out there. You're going to run either Tyler Algier or Caleb Huntley. Caleb Huntley, you can't really look at him too much as a start right now. Algier, you can, because he'll get the volume. He'll get the scheme. He's a RB2 start in this one, low-end RB2. If you have a better option, I would go with that, though. And then you have Leonard Fournette on the other side. The defense for the Falcons isn't that great against the run. It's kind of middle of the road. The volume, Fournette, his volume came way down last week, even though he had -3 yards rushing. That's ridiculous. And Rachaad White really cut into a lot of that. Rachaad White is ascending, but I think you still got to look at Fournette as that number one guy. Look for him to have a bounce back week, but I still say he's a RB2. He's Leonard Fournette, so if you have him on your team, he's probably your RB1, so you have to start him. But in this one, he's going to be in the RB2 status. He only gets 12 points, and based on what he did last week against the Chiefs, you might want to be careful. But the Chiefs' defense is really good, so you have to account for that too. Tennessee Titans and Washington Commanders. Derrick Henry is always a must start. The Commanders' defense is tough against the run, so he doesn't get much there. But the volume, the scheme, the boomability, everything else, Henry, 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 17 points, must start every week, RB1, run him out there. You can't sit him, period. Antonio Gibson, on the other hand, he's going against a tough Titans defense. Um, the volume is kind of, you never know. So he only gets 3 there. The scheme is not built around him. He doesn't have he's not showing any boom ability this year, or his ability just to have a blow up game. I sit him. He only got 9 points on my chart. I'd sit him this week. I wouldn't even touch that backfield. Wait for Brian Robinson Jr. to get back and see what he's capable of doing out of that backfield. But for this week, you got to sit him. Dameon Pierce and the Houston Texans versus James Robinson and the Jacksonville Jaguars. This should be a pretty good matchup. The Jaguars defense is pretty decent against the run. So Pierce only gets 3 there, but he's getting more of the volume these days. So you got to give him a 5 on the volume. The scheme is built around, him now in the backfield. So Lovie Smith really wants to get him the ball. So you got to give him points for that. And his boom ability, we saw that 75-yard run last week. He's capable of taking one to the house at any given moment. So he scores high there. I think he's a 16 on our chart this week. I think he's a start against this tough Jaguars defense. On the flip side, you have James Robinson, who's done a great job this year. He really has. They're going up against a defense that is really bad against the run. So he gets 5 points for that. The volume, he's going to get the majority of the volume out of the backfield. ETN still has not established himself in that backfield yet. And then the scheme is built more around the passing game, but as far as the backfield, he's going to get it. And then his ability to boom, he hasn't really shown much of that yet this year, but we'll see how the year progresses. He gets 15 points. He's an RB2. He's a start. If you have him on your team, go ahead and start him this week. The 49ers and the Panthers, the 49ers and the Panthers, this is the Niners defense is they're about as good as it gets. They're top 2 rush defense in the league. They've only given up 293 rushing yards and only 2 rushing touchdowns this year. And they've played some pretty tough games. So they're not going to be easy on Christian McCaffrey. But on their side of the ball, Jeff Wilson is going up against a defense that is pretty bad against the run. He's getting all the volume out of the backfield. He's getting the scheme out of the backfield, and his boom ability, that's the only thing that's down. Jeff Wilson Jr., we don't think of him as a guy who's going to get us 30 points or have a huge game. So because of that, he gets 15 points. He's an RB2 start. It's okay to run him out there this week. Go ahead and start Jeff Wilson. On the other side, CMC, you have to start Christian McCaffrey no matter what defense he's going against. And, he only has 13 total points against this particular defense. The 49ers have only given up, like I said, 2 rushing touchdowns this year. They've only given up 293 rushing yards in 4 games. So, he only gets 1 point in that department. His volume, he'll get the volume. The scheme, I don't think Matt Rule knows what he's doing, especially with Christian McCaffrey, but he is starting to throw him the ball more, which is awesome. And then his boom ability, he can hit a home run at any given moment. He can have a 30-point game at any given moment. So he gets 13. He's an RB2, but he's a must start. You got to start Christian McCaffrey. I'd run him out there no matter who is playing against. The Dallas Cowboys and the Los Angeles Rams. Now the Cowboys defense is stout. It's a really tough defense. There's nothing easy about this defense. So you're not getting much there if you're the Rams. Now this whole game though, if you could see, I'm just fading this whole backfield, everything. I'm fading it all. The Rams defense against the run is tough. The Cowboys defense against the run is tough. Ezekiel Elliott's not having a good year. He would only score 11 points on my chart here. He'd be a sit, and there's nothing to say about the Rams backfield. It's a mess. You don't want to start either anyone from the Cowboys, Pollard or Ezekiel Elliott. You don't want to start Darrell Henderson or Cam Akers from the Rams. Just fade this whole game from the backfield. If you have one of these running backs as your RB1, you're in trouble this week. The Eagles and the Cardinals, this should be a pretty good game. It's a good matchup. You have Miles Sanders, you have James Conner. You know, the Cardinals defense against the rush, they're a top 5 defense against the rush. They've only given up 3 rushing touchdowns this year, and they've only given up 348 rushing yards. So this is going to be a pretty good matchup. This defense is going to give Miles Sanders everything that he can handle. And the Eagles defense is a pretty good defense too. So with Miles Sanders, he only gets a 2 going up against his stout defense. The volume he's going to get is a 4 for him. The scheme, he gets 3 points for the scheme, and his boom ability, he's shown some signs that he can have big games. So he gets a 3 there. So Miles Sanders gets 12. He's an RB2 to run out against this very tough Cardinal defense. And then James Conner also against this defense, he's going to get the volume. He'll get the scheme. He gets 3 points in each of those categories. And his boom ability, we've seen him have some big games in the past. He gets a 4 there. He gets 13 total points. He's an RB2 start also. So not ideal. You can start these guys, but they both have tough matchups this week. We're almost through it. We have the Bengals and we have the Ravens. Now, the Bengals have a really stout defense against the run. They've only given up 1 rushing touchdown this season. That's it. Just 1 rushing touchdown, 343 yards. They're very, very tough against the run. On their side of the ball, Joe Mixon is going up against a team that really gives up a lot against the run. The Ravens have been pretty bad against the run this year. The volume, he's going to get the volume. Everything out of the backfield is coming Joe's way. The scheme is built partially around Joe and those young wide receivers, and his boom ability. He's able to have big games. He's not had a big game since week 1, so look for Joe Mixon to bounce back this week and have a big game. He's an RB1 for sure this week with 16 points. Go ahead and start him against this defense. And the Ravens on the other side, J.K. Dobbins just coming back. He's got 2 games back under his belt. He increased his looks, his touches almost by 2. Last week, he had 13 touches. The week before that, when he first made his debut, he only had 7 rushes. So they're trying to ease him back into it. I think he's going to be fine, but he is going against a real tough defense this week. His volume he should be the breadwinner there in the backfield, getting the majority of the touches. The scheme is always a Lamar Jackson is the scheme. So, but in the backfield, he'll get his share. And then boom ability, we haven't seen JK do much because he's been hurt. But I remember he's capable of having big games. So he gets 13 points. He's an RB2 this week against a very tough defense. It should be a really good and exciting game. It may be a very high scoring game too. Even with that said, with those defenses against the run, with the Bengals defense against the run, they're not that good against the pass. And we all know who Lamar Jackson is. And our final game, it's the Monday night game, and it is the Raiders and the Chiefs. The Raiders and the Chiefs, classic rivalry, Raiders and Chiefs. The Chiefs are the number 1 rushing defense in the league. They've only given up 2 rushing touchdowns. They've only given up 263 rushing yards. They are very stout against the run. They held Leonard Fournette to -3 yards last week. Now, he only had 3 carries, but still -3 yards. They made him not run the ball anymore. So they are a tough, tough defense. Josh Jacobs has his hands full in this one, and the Raiders have their hands full. I would fade Jacobs this weekend. I would not start him unless you absolutely have to. He's going to get the volume. He'll get some of the scheme. His boom ability is okay. He's, on my chart, he only gets 10 points because this defense is really tough. and they're gonna make it so the Raiders have to pass a lot because the Raiders are gonna have to try to keep up with Patrick Mahomes and this offense. And on the other side, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he's going against a mid-range defense against the run. The Raiders aren't horrible against the run. They're about mid-range, so he only gets 3 points there. His volume, Isaiah Pacheco has kind of, cut into that volume. So you got to be careful with the volume for Edwards-Helaire. Pacheco, he's on the rise, but Edwards-Helaire is an RB1 right now, and that's what he's been this year. I believe he's an RB2 and an RB disguised as an RB1 because his numbers say RB1, but I just can't buy that this guy is a legit RB1. This week, I say he's an RB2. He gets a 12 on the chart. He's an RB2 start. Go ahead and run him out there. Um, this is going to be a fun game to watch. The Raiders and the Chiefs, they always have good games. They're always tough. It's going to be on Monday night. So there you have it. There are your starts and your sits from the running back perspective for week 5. Go out there, get your lineups all set. Hopefully this helped you out, and we will catch you on the next one.